Public access, are you ready? Okay. Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, October 11th. We are a little late at 6:40, about 6:40, as the finance meeting ran over. And I am calling this Common Council meeting to order. We have a quorum present in our chamber, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thanks.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will call roll call.
We have 9 members present.
What?
Sorry, we have 10 members present. Got it. You're good.
We're good.
We're good.
I'm sure everybody's on top of it.
Yeah. Okay. And we have no proclamations tonight, so we will start now with the presentation of the Community Foundation Community Marketing Specialist.
Sorry. So what's it?
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Cheryl Wolken, and I was recently hired as the Wausau Area Marketing Specialist with the Community Foundation of North Central Wisconsin. So my presentation tonight is just to kind of tell you a bit about myself, about what the goals are for this position, and a little bit about what I've done already and what I'm planning to do in the future. There we go. So a little bit about me. I graduated with a BA in Political Science and German from St. Olaf College. I worked in the Twin Cities for many years, including at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. I was their donor information systems administrator. I moved to the Wausau area in 2014. A little bit after moving here, I created the website wausawmama.com. I'm also the author of the ABCs of Wausau. And just fun fact about me is I enjoy traveling. The primary objectives for this position are twofold: attraction marketing and retention marketing. Attraction marketing is promoting our open positions, our businesses, highlighting why the Wausau area is a great place to live and work, promoting the area to job seekers and prompting them to apply, and connecting job seekers with the opportunities that we have in our area and with people in our community. For retention marketing, highlighting people in our community, increasing resident attachment, and that's maybe partially through promoting events and activities, and then also highlighting some reports and facts about our area. I just added one up there. We're the #1 best place to work in manufacturing, according to Smart Asset from 2021. So I'm going to be partnering with a lot of different organizations. These are just the main ones. So the River District, City of Wausau, Marathon County, the Chamber, and the CVB. But also want to work with like McDevco, probably the United Way, some other major players in the area. Just a few goals that I've outlined here. So kind of starting off researching some of the best practices, looking at what other cities in our area and around the country are doing to attract talent and retain talent. Making connections, identifying the needs of our community and businesses, and then collecting some data to see, what community members think, what businesses think, how we're perceived outside the community. And then building some things like social media accounts, a website, and other ways to connect with talent. And then having surveys to test and get benchmarks for these things. And eventually maybe creating some programs, but that would be in the future. So the surveys would test a number of different things. So for attraction marketing, I'd be looking at how many open positions there are. Are we filling more of those through our work? How easy is it for businesses to hire and retain talent? How aware are the candidates of our area? Do they know what we have to offer? The quality of candidates, and are we getting a good number of survey submissions? For retaining, retention marketing, how satisfied are community members? What's their sense of belonging like? Is that increasing? How engaged are people in our community? How aware are they of what we have to offer? And how long are people staying? So some progress so far. I've only been in this position for just about a month. I've met with a lot of our partner organizations. I've started to create a plan for our website, and that's going to be wausau.com. We're currently receiving bids for a logo for that Wausau brand. We're applying for marketing from the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, and mapping out our advertising for the year. And the WEDC would possibly be covering a lot of those marketing expenses. Some opportunities would be amplifying the work of other organizations, having a centralized location for talent attraction and retention, connecting people with places, groups, and organizations, and then engaging in a really comprehensive plan to market our area to people outside the area. So just to summarize, I'll be using data to determine areas for opportunity, trying to increase a sense of belonging among people in the community, promoting our area to people in our region and nationally, and finding ways to connect job seekers with people who live here and with open positions that we need to have filled. That's the end of my presentation, but I could take questions or things like that.
Any questions? Okay. See none. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we will call on the citizens that were pre-registered to speak. We have a number of them here. When you come up, we ask that you state your name and address, and you will be timed. She's timing. So I'll start with Kelly Kolpicki. Okay, I don't see her. Okay, Amanda Patterson.
Good evening, I'm Amanda Patterson. My address is 5509 Isaiah Street in Weston. Good evening, Wausau City Council members. I'm Amanda Patterson, and I have been fortunate to serve as the principal at John Marshall for the past 8 years. I am so proud of the work that our students, staff, and families do each day to ensure a positive learning experience and outcome for our students. We are so excited to celebrate our 100th year of learning this year. The John Marshall School community has a rich history. As I've dug into the history of John Marshall, it has always been about the people. The notes I have show that the John Marshall Community Club began planning neighborhood events as early as 1923. This defines the real history, building a strong family and community culture that our staff now refers to as the Marshall family. This continues today with great involvement from the Southeast Side Neighborhood Group, our highly active PTO, and our creative staff that work hard to ensure this culture lives on. We have high attendance from our families in our school in all of our events. The relationships and culture that were started 100 years ago persist despite changes in our community and demographics. John Marshall School has never been about the brick and mortar. it's always been about the people that have built a culture of high levels of learning, relationships, and family engagement. As I have worked to understand the ordinance that you are framing your decisions from tonight, I see that we have a difference of priority. Yours is to preserve the exterior of a historic building in the past 100 years. Mine is to advocate for a positive, innovative interior learning environment that meets the needs of our students and families for the next 100 years. Your decision this evening may impact our district's ability to create the interior environment that we need for our students in the future. Whatever your decision this evening, please know that our culture is stronger and more important than being deemed a historic landmark building. I ask you to prioritize helping us ensure that we preserve our culture and amazing historic support for students for the next 100 years before the primary focus of a brick building. As a last note, we would like to invite you to our Centennial Celebration to celebrate 100 years of our Marshall family on Saturday, April 15th, 2023. There will be more information posted on our John Marshall Centennial Celebration Facebook page as we get closer to the date. Thank you.
Thank you. Christine Martins.
Good evening. My name is Christine Martins, and I reside at 1228 Arthur Street in Wausau. And I also sit on the Historic Preservation Commission. The Historic Preservation Commission has worked towards landmarking John Marshall for the past several months in recognition of its architectural beauty and importance to the neighborhood's history and culture. It is also a wonderful way to commemorate its 100th anniversary. As you read in your packet, the architecture of John Marshall is a fine example of collegiate revival, even with its many additions. The Commission seeks to protect this treasure for the community. The landmarking process is not created to disrupt the work of other organizations, but to act as a safeguard to the heritage of our community. The landmark designation does not inhibit the owner from undertaking improvements and changes to the interior of the building, nor does it disallow changes to the exterior. It just adds an additional check to ensure the change does not destroy the integrity of the building. The process is not difficult. The Commission is directed to make a decision within 7 days of the request. It is not a cumbersome process, nor is it intended to be. We have sought to work with the school district in this process and still hold the door open to discussion. As stated, it is not our intention to stand in the way of providing the best educational opportunities for our children and a great work environment for our teachers. However, we do seek to protect this building from destruction. The preservation of historic schools is not a new concept. In many communities, the importance of historic school buildings has been recognized, and they continue to greet students every day, and will for generations to come, because care was taken in creating a plan that included these resources. Historic buildings can be seen as an asset rather than a liability, and I hope the council and the community will see John Marshall as such. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Seefeld.
Scott Seefeld, 2007 Garth Street, where my family has called home since 1944. I spent 7 years at John Marshall, as did my father before me. My great-grandfather, Leo Roloff, spent 25 years there as the school's first custodian. Some say that education is not bricks and mortar. It is relationships, they say, and ideas. Virtual learning recently taught us that for most students, however, this just isn't true. Human beings are not merely brains on sticks. We are embodied creatures set in time and space and community and family. Education is not just any one of these things. It is the commingling of thought and imagination shared by caring people in a supportive place. So when ideas fall out of fashion or for a time are forgotten, which they sometimes are, or relationships change and people come and go, which they invariably do, places call us back to the values we were taught by the people who cared enough to challenge us to be our best selves and who expected us, I believe, to do and be the same for succeeding generations. We shape our buildings, Churchill once said, and afterward, our buildings shape us. Tearing down a serviceable building to build a brand new school would be outrageously expensive. It's absurd. And closing a school to ship students far off would be devastating for families in the neighborhood. It would be a step toward letting the southeast side of Wausau go. No, this is one of those rare and wonderful opportunities when the only option turns out to be the best option for the school district to work together with the neighborhood and with the city to invest the money needed into the building for the updates it requires to be a place of learning for another 100 years and well beyond. I'm asking you to do two things. Act upon the recommendation of the Historic Preservation Committee and the Wausau Plan Commission to designate John Marshall Elementary School as a historic landmark. And this may be the harder work, help us convince your fellow citizens on the school board and elsewhere. They're all good people. Appeal to their hearts, if not their reason, to invest in the education of our children and the values, history, and traditions of the southeast side of Wausau by caring for the place that has cared for us so well for so long. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas Brown?
Thomas Tony Brown, 715 North Fifth Avenue. I live about a block and a half from this school. And I'm speaking against its designation as a historic landmark. The firm that they're referencing built about 800 buildings, so it's hardly unique. I have no reason to have it be a historical landmark, and I see why there's no interference from the school district telling you to go ahead and table this as you did the last time I was here at the last meeting, or simply denying this request. It has no impact on what goes on inside of the school, and the alternatives are to put about $7 to $10 million in updating the facility, tearing it down, or tearing it down and rebuilding it. I was at the meeting last night of the school board where they talked about the possibility of a major revamping of education in this city. In my opinion, that revamping might include something rather dramatic in that education doesn't even happen in the way we've always thought it would. We've been doing it this way for 150 years. COVID taught us that that's not going to probably work forever. So this building is just a building. It means nothing to me in my neighborhood, except that it is a school, and apparently a very good one. And this designation doesn't change that. So I would urge you to not designate this as a historical building.
Keith Hiltz?
Good evening, everyone. Keith Hiltz, 22993 Wood Smoke Road, Wausau. So I'm here tonight to represent the Wausau School Board and the district. The City Council received a position statement that was unanimously approved by our school board. I just want to add a couple of additional perspectives and then be available for questions if needed. So as you know, the district is currently planning several building projects using the $120 million referendum funds that was generously approved by our community for us to invest into our facilities and to support our staff and students' learning and work environments. We're currently working on additions at Statine Elementary, South Mountain Elementary, Riverview Elementary, planning extensive remodels at John Muir Middle School. Also excited to be hopefully breaking ground soon on a new environmental learning center at the Wausau School Forest. We're looking at the future of education and the future of the community. And so we want to make sure that we're able to develop proactive plans that really serve the needs of our staff and students, communities, really in generations into the future. That's why we're asking the City Council to deny the request to landmark John Marshall Elementary. The Wausau School Board needs as much room to maneuver as possible in order to improve service to students, families, and staff. I'd like to add one other point that really hasn't been talked about from our perspective, and that is we agree with what people are saying tonight about the schools. We value our local history. We love old schools. They're beautiful. They have wonderful memories that many people have spoken to tonight. And we will treat all of our schools with respect. They've been gifted to us from the public, and we are very thankful for those gifts. The decisions that will be made regarding John Marshall, I want you to know we'll treat the history of that building and the people who've occupied it for 100 years with the utmost respect. I would like to offer G.D. Jones Elementary as an example, as a good faith offer of our willingness to respect both the history as we also improve the learning environments for our staff and students. If you're not aware, the front facade of G.D. Jones is now incorporated into the interior walls of the school library. It's protected and preserved for generations to come, that architectural art, right, and the history that it represents. And when I was hired here, an important part of my introductory tour was to see the library at Jones for that very reason. And people were so proud of their efforts to preserve that history and to, again, to keep it for the staff and the students readily available, protected forever. So one of the habits that we practice and we teach our students is to seek win-win outcomes. We're simply asking that you allow us to make the decisions to best serve the community and allow us to preserve our proud local history. Thank you very much.
And finally, Rick Lafrembourg.
Pretty good. Good college try. Rick Laframboy, 549 Sturgeon Eddy Road, Wausau, in the southeast side neighborhood, just a couple of blocks away from John Marshall, where our son went to school and our daughter currently goes. It is a treasure. I agree with that. The school's a treasure, but it's not the facade that's the treasure. It's the teacher I met with last night who's guiding my daughter now and who guided my son through 2 years of that school. It's the crossing guard who helps the kids cross safely on Kent Street, a busy street. It's the relationships that, as alluded to. And we will, trust me, fight for this school. We will fight for having a John Marshall Elementary School in the southeast side. Trust me on that. I've spoken with numerous neighbors about this issue. It's kind of came up to us in the 11th hour, and we'd all kind of scrambling to know what the impact this would have, as you've heard, on the district moving forward with its arduous process. It's a big undertaking to chart the path, the future facilities plan for this district. There's 13 elementary schools. And so that's where our focus is, to fight for John Marshall, to have a place for staff, for students, for our children, for our parents, to grow those relationships, to see that learning happen. It doesn't matter if it's a 100-year-old brick facade or if it's a new school built on the back of the lot and then the old one demolished. What matters is there is a school for the next 100 years. And for my kids and their kids, and on and on. So we will fight for this school. Trust me on that. I also trust the school leaders to engage us in the decision on what they're going to do. And I trust that they're going to do the right thing for our kids going forward. And I defer to them on not needing another barrier amidst this wide-ranging effort that they have to make here now on what to do with this $120 million that we provided them, invested in our kids' education in the future through that referendum in April. It's only been 6 months since then. And so I would ask the council tonight to do one of two things: either deny the request for this historic designation, because right now the focus should be on what we're going to do for the next 100 years, not preserving a 100-year-old brick. As the teacher said to me last night, it's 78 degrees in my room. That brick doesn't do anything for me. I need a new HVAC system with healthy air that exchanges often and regulates temperature. what is that, a $4 million, last we heard, estimate on an HVAC system? I don't even know how you retrofit a 100-year-old building like that, but maybe it's possible, and it's costly. So I would just recommend either denying tonight or tabling this, because the other fact is the Historic Commission has not engaged our neighborhood leaders, our PTO, or our neighborhood group has not been aware of this until recently. I've tried to make them aware of this issue here. So here we are at the 11th hour, and I think we need to deserve a seat at the table as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. We are now at the consent agenda, starting with file 220901, minutes of previous meetings of 9/13/22 and 9/27/22 to 22-1008, a resolution approving agreement for management of pretreatment requirements for town of Centennial users discharging the city of Wausau wastewater treatment facility. I'll take a motion to accept. Oh, okay, motion we have from Watson and a second from Denny. If there's no discussion on this,
You may begin voting. Motion passes 10-0.
thank you. On to file 22-1003, mayor's appointments, there are none. File 22-1004 from CISM, every time. Ordinance repealing all existing parking ordinance on North 3rd Street between East Bridge Street and East Wausau Avenue and amending section 10.20.080 subsection A, designating no parking on the west side of North 3rd Street between East Wausau Avenue and Chicago Avenue, no parking both sides of North 3rd Street between Chicago Avenue and East Bridge Street, and designating no parking here to corner on the east side of North 3rd Street from a point 60 feet south of the crosswalk at East Wausau Avenue back to East Wausau Avenue. We have a motion from Rasmussen and a second from Henke. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 10-0.
Moving on to file 22-1005 from CISM, an ordinance amending section 10.20.80 subsection A, designating no parking on the north side of Grant Street, beginning at the intersection of North 7th Street, extending east 210 feet. It was approved 5-0 at CISM. We have a motion from Henke and a second from Herbst and Alder Denny.
I think when we did this, this was before the Hiawatha announced that they were closing. Does this affect that at all? Is this right in front of Hiawatha? Correct.
Yes, they were notified of this. There were no objections or anything for that with this parking amendment.
Okay, now I guess my point was part of the reason for doing this was their input, and now they're closing. But, you know, I don't object to it, just a question.
Alder Rasmussen?
Thank you. I thought the request and the commentary from CISM actually came from Timekeeper versus Hiawatha. I mean, and obviously both of them were asked. We talked about the parking arrangement, whether one or both was open, but it seemed like the traffic snarls that exist there exist whether or not Hiawatha was busy. I think a lot of that traffic is coming out of Timekeeper.
Okay. Any further comments? Seeing none, I think we're ready to vote.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 10-0.
Thank you. Moving on to file number 22-1006, coming from Historic Preservation and Plan, Joint Ordinance amending Section 2.82.055 of the Wausau Municipal Code to include the designation of the John Marshall School at 1918 Lamont Street as a local historic landmark. It was approved 5-1 on Historic Commission and 6-0 on Plan. We have a motion from Alder Gisselman and a second from Martins. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. First, a couple questions. So in the referendum ask that just passed, and this may be a question for Dr. Hiltz, in the referendum ask where the revenue was approved for upgrades to facilities almost throughout the district, was there funding in that referendum requested for upgrades and retrofits at Marshall in its existing building? Or was there a plan at that time already to replace the structure?
Yeah, I guess.
I'm assuming you want me to come up here?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Please.
There were some funds dedicated to Marshall. The board anticipated this conversation about possible restructuring, and so they limited the investments at the elementaries to either additions to deal with overcapacity or with safety and security. So at this point, those would be just the safety and security we would be designated for Marshall at this point.
Okay,
Does that
so
answer
no
your question?
HVAC improvements for the
Correct.
air circulation, et cetera?
Correct.
Okay.
Not at this point.
Okay. Is there a plan, or at least a rendering, of what a new building might look like?
No.
Okay. That helps. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Anything else?
I have just a quick follow-up, I guess, to that. This decision for us, I think, is going to be, it's difficult because I think it's not just about money. It's about community engagement. Neighborhood schools matter. I think most of us have either had kids in or been the product of neighborhood schools in this community. And I think any kid's ability to walk and bike to school matters. And I think that our neighborhood kids should not have to be, picked up and shuttled somewhere else by bus because their neighborhood school wasn't a practical option. I also think that community engagement needs to extend beyond a radius of 250 feet surrounding the structure. So often when we send out public notice to ask what people think, the statutory requirement is that you send letters within 100 or 200 feet, and then you find that people a block away that have a serious opinion on the issue never got asked. And so a couple years ago, we were in this same pickle with Grant Elementary. But at that point, there was a whole different dynamic in play where Grant Elementary was to be demolished and then combined with Lincoln Elementary, and families from both schools were crying out about a lack of engagement, a lack of input, feeling dismissed, like the Lincoln School building wasn't good enough for their kids to go to, but it was good enough to bus them across town and then put a charter school in there. I mean, there was an awful lot of angst surrounding that. And, we know that the district is capable of building new with a nod to the old. Wausau East is a great example of that. Wausau East has taken elements of the original Wausau High School and brought them over to the new building, and they continue in their new building to celebrate their history. So we know that that's possible. But the concern we had with Grant was the treatment of everyone involved, because there was an awful lot of emotion surrounding the fact that the community engagement and the stakeholder engagement was lacking. And we felt at that time, I think as a council back then, the only way that we could step in front of a process that was rolling down the tracks. The building that was to be built was like a mega school. It didn't fit with the neighborhood. It didn't contemplate parking and traffic needs of two schools combined in the middle of a neighborhood and a high-traffic street. And so we felt like the only way we could slow that train down was to vote for the designation. But I do think that there needs to be a broader conversation here than just us now making the decision when we find out that one of the most valuable assets grade schools have is their PTO. That's a group of engaged parents that care about outcomes, and they want what's best for everybody involved. If they weren't asked, and if the adjacent neighborhood wasn't asked, I feel like that is really selling them short. I would like to see us wait on this decision for at least 1 month. Give them time, either the Historic Preservation Commission or somebody is going to need to reach out to the stakeholders and get a different level of feedback as far as what people want to see. I know that at least the feedback that I have heard is, and like Rick said, they want to see a neighborhood school in that neighborhood. Whether it's new or old, there's a difference of opinion, but nobody wants to lose their neighborhood school. And I feel like if putting a designation, a historic designation on the building ensures that there will always be a neighborhood school for that neighborhood, that may be worth considering. But if the right people haven't been asked, then I think we are too soon at this. So I would like to see a little different level of engagement before we make a final decision.
Alder Gissman?
Thank you. Like I was said before, this process started earlier, if not even last year. Initially, it came to the Plan Commission. The Plan Commission gave the school board which turned out to be 7 months of feedback with regard to their plans. And then eventually, after those 7 months, then it came back to the Plan Commission, and the Plan Commission forwarded to the City Council. So I think, where was this? I won't ask that question. I will just say that I think that there was ample opportunity for civic engagement from the beginning of the Plan Commission. The school board, the school administration knew that this was coming before the Plan Commission, and eventually it did. And just lately, we received the letter from the school board with regard to a petition, a letter urging denial. Well, what I want to present to you is that I think that it is the obligation of the Historic Landmarks Commission to safeguard our public spaces, our public buildings. Our ordinance says it is declared a matter of public policy that the protection, enhancement, perpetuation, and use of buildings of special architectural character or special historic interest or value is a public necessity and is required in interest of the health, prosperity, safety, and welfare of the people. So we're trying. John Marshall is there for 100 years. It's an historic building. As said before, it has demonstrated a cultural effect on that community and on that southeast side as well as this community. 100 years. That little school in 1922 saw the growth of that whole neighborhood. Speak to the historical sites of that neighborhood. Memorial Hospital, the airport, all of that, Memorial Park. Speak to all that history, and that southeast side knows of that history. They know of their uniques, what I consider their unique space in this city, and John Marshall is a part of that. It's more than a wall being preserved and putting into a new building. It's more than that. It's the building that has stood there for 100 years. And I think that it's the obligation of the Historical Preservation Commission to honor that building, honor that neighborhood, and what that school has done for that 100 years. So I urge passage of this. I think that that is it's a unique structure in our history. A lot of schools have gone away, been razed. We don't have very many left that are 100 years old. Grant School, other schools have been transitioned into other uses. But Grant School, now John Marshall, are two schools that have served this community very well. And I stand here to honor it and designate it as a historic landmark of the city of Wausau. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Lukens?
Thank you. Well, since this school is in my district and pretty close to where I live, I'm not on either of the commissions, but I've really done a lot of homework. I've spent hours, a lot of hours on this. Back when, after I became older, I would be walking my dogs throughout the neighborhood, and I was stopped. So before, I would say this was like last spring, okay? And I would be stopped by residents a number of times that said, hey, we don't want to see that school closed, or we want that school to continue. So when the email came through about the tour in August, I went along, and it was, I really enjoyed it. But at the end of the tour, Mr. Tess spoke to, the recognition that the school is a very important building, or it's not just a building. So it isn't just a building. From all the people that I've heard from, I will say that I will disagree with that. I get it. I'm in education. I very much value in school. School may be changing in some ways, but we also learned a lot from COVID that virtual leaves a lot to be desired. I've seen that firsthand. So anyway, but at the end of the tour, Mr. Tess recognized that it is important to the community. And my understanding was that Mr. Tess said that it would not be closed. That was my understanding. I don't have the exact words, so I'm not putting words into your mouth. That was my understanding, and that's what I told residents, who are very relieved. So when this all came up, I have been contacted by a number of residents. I will say I've been contacted. I definitely have received more requests for the landmarking than for not. And, it's a tough place for me because I care very much about what residents of the district want. And I know that there are a variety of viewpoints on this by people very passionate about it. I wrote I do have a couple questions, maybe for Dr. Hiltz. So one question I have is, did the Wausau School District have plans a year or so ago, before the referendum, to move John Marshall students to Hawthorne Hills? A year or two ago? Was that ever in the plans, or the board, ever?
No.
Okay, so was there ever talk about anything with the school before this?
It's interesting. Over the last number of years, there have been a number of conversations about possible ways that schools might be restructured. And it's always been kind of anecdotal, and you spoke to challenges with community engagement during COVID. That was just a mess. And so really the school board has now said, the conversations have been going on for years. There's passionate views on both sides, so they want to make a decision. And so right now we are engaged in a very overt effort with staff and community about this. So I think there could have been some conversations, but there's never been an official plan or request or motion, anything like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And that's the only question really that I had, so thank you for that. So a couple of other things that I learned. I spent all Saturday also researching, going back through all the minutes, all the agendas of the Historical Preservation Commission, the Plan Commission. I've talked to a lot of people just to get background, because I really want to be balanced and objective. I did learn that Eau Claire Heights is a historic district in the neighborhood. There are 169 homes just down the street from the school that are all historic. They've been landmarked, and it's a district. So it's not something unusual or uncommon. I don't think it's an uncommon request in the least. I also know there are some benefits if a building would be designated, especially not maybe at the local level, but at the state and federal levels. So my concerns are that the restructuring plan, I understand that's huge. So my concern is that could take months or years. And, in that time, likely, some of us, are going to have moved on. And so who does this impact the most? Even the teachers there may still be there. The children there right now will have moved on. So again, I want this to be a careful process. And so I guess, because I know that there are generations of people that live on that southeast side, and even though it may be, some things may be changing, I've heard some people say, well, it's an aging neighborhood, but yes and no. And so I just don't want any assumptions to be made, and I want to respect also the generations of people. So my request, and I don't know if this is the time, I don't know how this works, but if my request would be to table it for a month and allow the neighborhood residents to ask their questions, to meet with the Historic Preservation Committee, to meet with school district personnel. Like, I'd like to find a win-win in the short term, because, I do want to respect, I care about what everyone thinks. I don't have children at that school, but I still care. And I care about the generations of people that are still living in that neighborhood, that have gone to that school, that have children, their children and grandchildren. So that's where I stand. And I know it's not easy for anyone. I know it's a very complex situation. So thank you.
So just to be clear, that was a motion to table for 1 month?
Yeah.
Okay, do we have a second?
Or is it really a motion to refer back to the Historic Preservation Commission? That's what she asked. Or do you mean just to table it to a council meeting in a month?
Okay, well, what I would like to happen, so I don't know how, if you can help me. Well, I would like to table it for a month to give residents the chance to get their questions asked. And find out the background.
Yeah.
Okay, then she is moving to lay it on the table till the November,
Whatever the first week.
9th or whatever it is, council meeting.
Okay, so can you make a motion
And here?
And you got a second?
I'm waiting.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, now we have it. So now,
Okay, anybody can put in a second at this point?
Now-
No. Okay, now she did.
motion to lay
Okay.
it on the table.
Yeah. So now we do have an amended,
Not amended.
or a motion to lay it on the table for 1 month.
Yep.
And we have a motion and a second, so any further discussion will be on the motion to lay it on the table for a month. Alder Denny.
It's not debatable.
No. Okay. There are people in the queue, but okay, so I guess we are going to take a vote on that.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 6-4.
We're moving on. File number 12-1012 from the HR and Finance Committee's Joint Resolution authorizing health, dental, vision, and supplemental insurance plan design for 2023. This was approved by HR 3-0 and Finance 5-0. I have a motion by Herbst and a second by Rasmussen. Any discussion? I'm ready to vote.
You may begin voting.
Oh, sorry.
Motion passes 10-0.
Okay. We are on the suspend the rules, 6B filing and 12A referral of resolutions, and we require a two-third vote. Okay, we have a motion by Rasmussen, a second by Hanky.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 10-0.
Thank you. We have filed 21-1109 from the council, resolution approving leaf baling equipment contract with Bauman Dairy Farm LLC. We have a motion by Watson and a second by Lukens. I have a question, if that's okay. In the packet, of what I understand, this is just a change in the name of the company. But it is looking as budget neutral, and it's said no, but this was passed by council previously, so I would assume it was in the budget, and it doesn't appear there's any budgetary changes in changing the name. So I'm trying to reconcile that.
I would agree with you.
Okay.
And you're right, it is just a name change because we're leasing the equipment, not contracting the services. And so the equipment was sold to a different corporate entity.
I think sometimes these don't get updated.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 10-0.
Okay. File 21-1109A from Finance, a resolution approving modification of the 2022 to move funds from Seal Coat budget to hot mix budget for street maintenance. We have a motion by Watson and a second by Denny. Any questions? Okay. Perfect.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 10-0.
Okay. And we're up to public comments. Anybody would like to give public comment? Okay. Then seeing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Motion by Watson, second by Hanky.
For sure. They seem kind of long.
Yeah, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
And we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.